Well, good morning. Our topic here is going to cover early stand establishment. When you look at some of the other ones that we've covered, when you talk to growers that are very interested in making sure their plants get off to a good start, it really encompasses early stand establishment. I know this is a topic that fits us very well as we're coming up to planting season. Now, outside of getting your planters ready when it comes to the equipment side, there's some things we should be making sure we're checking off when it comes to our genetics, as well as nutrition, as well as making sure we've got our PGRs or plant growth regulators or biologicals or biostimulants in place if it's going to be something that will respond within the environment we're planting. So making sure we get off to an early stand establishment is critical. And so if we look like this, when we look at a graph around here, non-uniformity in emergence can directly impact yield potential and ultimately decreasing that yield potential. I don't get to walk a lot of fields where just out of the gate, we're consistently going to be late. Unless it's just an environment that is just really conducive and hard, or we got maybe a hybrid that's got low germ, that affects us directly there. But what we consistently get in a lot of our area is things that look like this. We get a good tall emergent, a shorter one, tall, short, and we get something that looks like this or like this at the top. And what we should look at is if we get a fair amount of our plants early and we just say, it's not too bad having these that are shorter, well, it can directly impact our yield potential in a negative avenue. So if we get stands that we get some erratic emergence, if we would do the calculation, we could get in anywhere from a 6 to a 10% just decrease in yield because of that emergence. Now, if you listen to people like Randy Dowdy or David Hula, they really emphasize soil temperature when they're out there planting. Now, if you ask yourselves here in northeast Nebraska, what's our soil temperatures like when we're out planting? I don't think a lot of us would raise our hand and say that we plant in soil temperatures that are 55 degrees and higher. But when you listen to those guys, they don't start planting or don't want to do their high yield areas with soil temperatures that are less than 55 degrees and the extended forecast rising in temperature. So that should be we should be asking ourselves a question then. If we can't wait for the soil temperatures to be 55 and above, what are we doing to manage that situation if we can't directly impact that with the environment? Well, we should be making sure we're using some starters or we're doing some seed treatments out there. There's a lot of options out here to manage that stand establishment. So if we don't, we can get into things like uneven emergence. You can see we got one out, one just trying to push through. We can get some crusting if we get some conditions, if we till it too hard. We can get into soil temperatures that have us trying to leaf out and curl down below the ground, which can ultimately impact survivability to our plants, which then I'm walking more and more of our fields because of the weather conditions we've had in these several years, is we're getting into more what we get these brown crowns early on in the plants. If you want to go out and walk your fields here in 2020, after we get done planting, start slicing open some of your piths or your plants in half and look down here in the pith of our plant and see if you got discolorations. And we could possibly be leading to already crown infection at that stage. That can directly impact that health of that plant as well as the availability of that plant to pull in moisture and nutrients throughout the plant growth and development. So making sure we limit these types of effects is very critical depending on what type of growing condition is going to settle in here for us when we start planting. Now, I mentioned 55 degree soil temperature that Randy Dowdy and David Hula and those guys that pay attention to high yields, but let's just look at just the impact that's soil temperature has effect on a nutrient called phosphorus. So if we've got 70-degree soil temperature, we've got 100% of our phosphorus available. But if we drop down to 55-degree soil temperature, only 31% of that phosphorus is available because of the slow root development, as well as solubility of that phosphorus that's available. That all directly in microbial activity slows that availability of phosphorus for that early plant to get established. We all know phosphorus is important through that process, and just that soil temperature will play an impact on that phosphorus availability. So for some of us that know we're going to be planting in some cold temperatures, like reduced tillage, minimum tillage, no-till, these are situations that we can impact by having starter or having a seed treatment. We can help ourselves out there to make sure we get it off to a fast start and help ourselves out. So this is a picture here that I want to influence and show you how the influencing of zinc concentration, this happens to be on a wheat seed, but this is important on corn as well, but this is the impact of zinc concentration in the seed. On the left side here is if we have a low concentration of zinc in that seed. In the middle, if we got a, kind of a average amount of zinc in that seed. And then here on the right side is if we have a high level amount of zinc in that seed. Now if you're going to plant wheat and you're going to drive wheat stand establishment, you can see the direct correlation of zinc concentration in that seed, how that plays an important factor for getting an early stand establishment. If we got a low concentration, here's what that looks like. But if we got a high concentration, that value of zinc has a critical impact on stand establishment. Now, if you are buying cropland seed, which is from Winfield United that you guys get from Farmer's Pride, all of our seed we're treating with zinc seed treatment. The new one that we're utilizing is Fortivent, and we do testings across that. If you look at here, this was like similar to the seed treatment demo we had in Battle Creek for you, those of you growers that walk through there. We saw that where we had no zinc seed treatment, it was slower, we had more erratic stand establishment, but when we put that zinc seed treatment on, we get a bigger, robust plant early on, which sets us up to a higher increased stand establishment for uniformity and for yield potential out there. So through all of our testing here that was done in 2018, we see a 5 bushel response from just adding zinc to that seed treatment. Okay? There is some more that's going to be out in the industry when it comes to planter box treatments or a talc replacement or a graphite replacement for some of these products that some of your Farmer's Pride agronomists will be talking to you about. Is very similar to what we're trying to adjust early on for that seed nutritional need. Okay, and it's all around this. Those of us are all agronomists, either we're growers or we're agronomists at heart or we're the banker. We all have a role with understanding agronomics. And so what I got here is a picture of is the germination and emergence process from a seed. This happens to be a barley seed germination, but our corn seed would be very similar to this. And the left-hand side, you can see components like gibberellic acid, zinc, auxin, cytokinin, and phosphorus. Out of those groups, these all play critical roles through that germination and emergence process. Gibberellic acid, auxin, and cytokinin are what we call plant growth regulators, or PGRs. These are hormones that naturally happen in the plant, and they are very important throughout that plant. And we'll get into that going a little bit further here. But then when we look at zinc and phosphorus, these are what we call, zinc would be a micronutrient, and phosphorus is what would be considered to be a macronutrient. So when we put that seed in the ground, we have to have imbibition of water. So anywhere from 30 to 40% of that seed weight we have to imbibe in water. Once we do that, we start tripping into this process through germination process from our seed. And so we trip into what we call GA3, which is gibberellic acid. That writes the codes for RNA and amylase enzyme. So then we also have importance of zinc, which is an amino acid, which tryptophan, which leads into an auxin activity, which helps out with cell division and differentiation. We get into cytokines, which helps us at the end of the process drive and extend that coleoptile. Okay? And phosphorus is a main energy source for all this to happen. So through all this process, there is a very critical and complex situation that's happening. If the environment is not suitable for all this to happen, we could potentially benefit for adding it to that process to make sure we don't slow down stand establishment. Okay, so let's focus in here a little bit more. Some of you are familiar with what we call Ascend, but we've came out with a new product called Ascend Pro. Ascend Pro is similar, the same thing as Ascend SL or Ascend WSG, utilizing gibberellic acid, which helps start that germination. Also helps out with the final uniformity of emergence. We also have cytokinin in it, which also supports germination. Also promotes fibrous root growth. And then the last one, which we call IBA or endobutyric acid, helps out with cell growth and root growth and development. But what's different between Ascend, the other formulations, the older formulations we're using, and Ascend Pro is we added amino acid derivative, which also helps out with mitigating plant stress. So we've made a product better than what it has been because of some things we did for tweaking. Last, people ask us, why did you add that amino acid derivative in there? Well, a lot of the situation comes through these PGRs, biologicals and biostimulants. These products aren't consistent on how they work. Meaning, they got environments that they work good in, they got some environments that they work best in, and they got some environments where they add no value in. So all we need to do is just guess what environment we're planting in, right? That's pretty hard for us to do. But what we do as a company is now can we make a product that fits in these environments cross-functionally and make sure that we can get a value out of them in a consistent environment no matter what happens through that growing season and at planting season. So what we did was we took Ascend Pro, we took it against our Ascend SL, and what we're interested in is okay, so what happens if the soil is warm, which is greater than 55 degrees, after planting? What happens if it's warm and wet, which is over 1.5 inches after planting? What happens if we have warmer air conditions, over 47 degrees? And then what happens if we got really wet conditions? Okay? And so what you want to look at here is we want to see a high wind percentage. We want to see a pretty good percentages. And if you take all those environments added together, when we do Ascend Pro versus Ascend SL, we see a 77% wind advantage. That's good for us. The higher percentage we are, the more consistent that product is going to work for us. Okay? If you look at all the average yield on winds, we see an average of 7.5 bushel response from the Pro versus Ascend when we take the sites that yielded responsively to that response. So what we did was we took a product that we've been using in several years now and we've made it better with some different additives in there, that amino acid derivative, to work with an extended range of conditions when we're out there planting. So if you've got more questions or thoughts around, we're getting closer to planting, make sure that you can contact one of your Farmer's Pride agronomists, and they'll be more than willing to help you here in the short weeks coming up to planting. Thank you.